American Top 40.
This is Casey Kasem on American Top 40, and you're listening to this week's 40 top songs in the 50 states. At number 28, the hottest debuting song in American Top 40, Joe Cocker, Cry Me a River. Highest debuting song this week in American Top 40 at number 28, Cry Me a River, Joe Cocker. And you're hearing the hottest hits in America as the countdown goes on.
American Top 40.
Well, next in our countdown of the year's 100 biggest hits is a song by the English blues screamer Joe Cocker, whose first public performance consisted mainly of ducking empty bottles thrown at him by the audience. That was a standard procedure at the English club called the Minerva. It had a very uninhibited clientele, you might say. If they liked you, they just went on about their drinking. But if they didn't like you, then you had to finish your act ducking flying objects. Well, they must have liked Joe Cocker. He came away with no scars and the start of a great career. Last spring, he peaked at number 5 with a song that comes in at number 66 for the year. You Are So Beautiful.
Casey's Top 40.
Now we're up to the latest hit for a rock legend who was so insecure about his first recording contract that he refused to give up his day job. And it was a good thing he didn't. Here's the story. It was back in 1964, at the start of the British invasion, that a gravel-voiced young British singer named Joe Cocker was offered a recording deal with Decca Records. Now, of course, a lot of aspiring singers would drop everything else in life at the mention of those two magic words, recording deal. And true enough, the deal seemed like a great opportunity to Joe. He had been spending his days working for the East Midlands Gas Board installing gas lines. At night, he'd sing in local clubs. It would have been great to quit his day job in order to concentrate on his music, but Joe was a cautious young man. And so instead of giving up everything, he took a leave of absence and headed off for what he hoped was fame and fortune. Joe worked hard, he recorded a number of singles, went on a tour of American Army bases in Europe, and opened in England for Manfred Mann and the Hollies. Then, at the end of 6 months, Joe took a look at the results of all his hard work. After his expenses were paid off, he'd made a total of 50 pence, a little over $1. Not only that, but his recording contract had expired. Joe's leave of absence turned out to be a very smart move, and he went back to installing gas lines during the day and singing in local clubs at night. It took 4 more years, but finally, Joe got another contract. And after his version of a Beatles hit called With a Little Help from My Friends went all the way to number 1 in England, Joe Cocker finally quit his day job. Joe's been singing full-time ever since. He's had top 40 success with hits like The Letter, You Are So Beautiful, and the duet Up Where We Belong. But Joe's still a cautious fella, and who knows, if things ever go bad again, he might still call up the gas board and ask for his old job back. But not this week. Former gas line installer Joe Cocker climbs 9 notches and installs himself comfortably at number 23 on Casey's Top 40 with When the Night Comes.
Hold on. American Top 40.
I'm Shadoe Stevens and another hit run to number 1. Here's a debut song from a man who just performed at the tearing down of the Berlin Wall. He was on tour in Europe, and a Berlin radio station invited him to perform an impromptu concert right there at the wall. So flanked by West and East German musicians, the songs he sang included his number 1 Up Where We Belong, Unchain My Heart, and With a Little Help from My Friends. Direct from the Berlin Wall, or what's left of it, here's Joe Cocker.
Casey's Top 40.
Wherever you are and wherever you go, you can hear Casey's Top 40 every week on great radio stations like High 95, 10 songs in a row, Birmingham, Alabama. Best Mix 105.7 KOKZ, Waterloo, Iowa. WBBQ-FM, Augusta, Georgia. And Radio 95 FM Stereo, Port of Spain, Trinidad. Now, from Sheffield, England, here's Joe Cocker, a 45-year-old star who got started in music when he was 16, playing drums in his brother's group, the Cavaliers. These days, the drum's far behind. He's a rock and blues singer.
Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem. We're counting down the hottest hits in the nation on Casey's Top 40. Here's a British blues singer who early on in his career may have been bitten by Beatlemania. He first appeared on record in England in 1964 singing the Beatles song I'll Cry Instead with a group called Vance Arnold and the Avengers. 5 years later, in 1969, he made his American debut on stage at Woodstock with another Beatles song, With a Little Help from My Friends. Then, 6 months after that, he hit the top 40 with yet another Beatles song. She Came In Through the Bathroom Window. Today, he's still going strong, even without Beetlejuice. And this week, he has survey song number 14. Here's Joe Cocker.
American Top 40.
With all the stars, songs, and stories, I'm Shadoe Stevens, and here's the story of the English star whose first public performance ever found him facing a hail of, shall we say, discontent. It happened back in the 1960s at an English pub called Minerva. The pub was the British version of a rowdy Western saloon or roadhouse. And if the regulars liked you, no problem. But if they didn't, you'd quickly find it raining empties. They'd actually throw bottles. Well, the crowd pelted this singer that night, but he went on to win fans all over the world, and he's still making hits almost 30 years later.
Casey's Coast to Coast.
Well, now we're up to a classic love song brought to you by Match.com. It's a ballad in which the singer's voice is falling apart, and critics say that's why the song works. It was back in 1974 that Joe Cocker recorded a song written by his friend Billy Preston. At the time, Joe's career was in a state of meltdown. After more than 15 years on the road, years of too much drinking, too many drugs, and too many cigarettes, Joe's voice was just a rasp. He needed a hit, and he knew this song was going to save him. But the more he tried to sing it, the worse his voice became. Toward the end, he hardly had a voice at all. And that may be the secret of the song's success. One critic wrote that, quote, "It's not the words that make the song so beautiful. It's Joe's expressive voice. It gives the song exactly the mood it needs. And his final rasp, those last two words, are perfect." Now, here is that classic love song from 1975, You Are So Beautiful, by Joe Cocker.